Friday, week 18, football has meaning again. Why? Because Damar Hamlin is speaking, breathing tube out of his mouth, progress being made, spoke to his teammates today. Praise God. My guy JC did it again. He did it again. Blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings in this new year. These last couple of years have started off really rough with deaths going all the way back to, what was it? Was it 19 with Kobe? Was it 19 or 20? It's been a run here where we've gotten some really serious blows to humanity, with different people passing away or just situations that have been less than ideal. This would have been a less than ideal situation for the biggest sport in the United States to have a blood on its hands. This could have been a catastrophe, but JC said, no, we're not done with this young man yet. What a beautiful thing it is. And something that has spawned of this whole ordeal is the contributions. And this is the good side of humanity. I've said enough. Let's jump into this show. You're dialed into the 308th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 308th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. A number of topics to get to today. We're going to talk about how the NFL decided to handle the canceled or postponed, then now canceled Week 17 contest between Buffalo and Cincinnati, and the ramifications from that, the fallout. We'll explain all of that here on the program today. We'll jump into Week 18. Now that Damar Hamlin is speaking, and we're not technically out of the woods, but I feel like we're out of the woods now. Okay. We started to make the progress that was necessary. We got the extreme movements in the extremities. We got the cognitive brain functioning going on when he asked, did they win the game? And then today, the news of him. Let's go ahead and just jump into the gem dropping session, shall we? Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. This had a chance to be a catastrophe of the highest order when it comes to sports. One of the things we don't associate with sports is death. Okay, there are a lot of things that are synonymous with sports. And football is a very gruesome and physically taxing and demanding sport. And there are a lot of things that come with that. Even with that said, death is not one of them. That was a realistic possibility after the scene on Monday night. But we avoided what would have been one of the worst stories in sports in the last probably 3-4 decades. Had this not gone the way that it's trending in right now, which is Damar Hamlin being okay. So I sat here with you guys on Monday night after it happened. I was a little emotional. I told a story of why that kind of hit close to home for me. And the thing that I said was, as someone who has been not quite in their shoes, I didn't watch a teammate collapse on the field, lose consciousness, heart stop beating. I didn't sit there and watch that happen to a guy that I stood next to, that I called and considered a brother. I didn't do that. But I told you, having been through something similar, there's no way I'm playing until I know he's okay. I'm just sorry, I'm not doing it. So the NFL, they were very strategic in not announcing that the Bills game was going to go on as scheduled. They had already done that with Cincinnati. We already knew Cincinnati was playing at 1:00 against Baltimore, and we already knew that that game was going to take place. Now, the assumption was Buffalo was going to play. They were preparing this week as if they were going to play that game against New England, but nothing had absolutely been etched in stone. If Damar Hamlin had taken a turn for the worse, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are playing this Sunday. And there's a chance that the NFL isn't playing this Sunday. But once they saw where he was heading, they started to, go ahead with business as usual. And I still said, if he's not okay, if Buffalo doesn't have confirmation that this kid is in, great spirits and he's moving in the right direction, I don't know how you get these guys to go out on the football field and play. I just don't know how you do that. Well, today was, I think, what all of those players, members of that staff, everyone in that building, it's what they needed. And just watching Sean McDermott talk about the looks on the guys' faces in that meeting, and the staff members, they were all surprised. There weren't many people who knew of the surprise. McDermott said he told the team that he had a treat for them today. And those guys kind of knew it had something to do with Damar. They weren't quite sure. I don't think they expected to see him, to hear him speak, but that he did today. They FaceTimed Damar Hamlin in front of the entire team, to which there was this thunderous applause, standing ovations, guys yelling out all kinds of crazy stuff. I wish I could have seen it. I probably would have cried. I probably didn't need to see it because I'm not a crier. But that might have been one of those situations that would have pulled on the heartstrings for sure. And we may ultimately see that down the road when it's more appropriate. Right now, he's still in the hospital, probably still in critical condition, but he's out of the woods, if you ask me. We went from trying to get his heart to beat again, which they did on the field, and that staff deserves all the credit in the world for their quick response and being ready in that moment. These things don't happen very often. They were prepared. Because when a guy's heart stops beating and blood and oxygen stops flowing to the brain, you're literally working with seconds and minutes. Every second, every minute that goes by where that heart isn't ticking and that blood and oxygen isn't flowing is closer to death for that individual. And their rapid response is probably the reason he's here today. But we started with a guy that laid lifeless and motionless on a football field. That then went to, hey, vitals have returned to normal, but we want to monitor him, get the brain activity going. We're going to put a tube, we're going to sedate him, put a tube down his throat, have a machine breathing for him so he was not breathing on his own, and the brain activity hadn't necessarily come back yet. Still was worried about that. Then we go from that to, hey, oxygen has been turned down from 100% to 50%. So he's starting to breathe a little bit more on his own. Lung functions are starting to come back. Had to turn him from on his back to on his stomach, to try to help facilitate that. Then you go from oxygen being turned down from 100 to 50 to we're taking the oxygen completely off, taking the tube out of his mouth. Well, they still had the breathing tube down his throat. Yeah, what we got the last report was, movement in all extremities. Legs are moving, hands and arms are moving, and he was able to cognitively wake up squeeze the hands of those around him, and then ask the question, did we win? By writing it down on a piece of paper. That let you know mentally his faculties are all here. He's sharp as a tack. That was the first sign for me. Oh my God, we're going to get a dub here. We're going to get the biggest dub of the year to this point. And when the doctors told him, you just won in the game of life. That's priceless stuff. So you go from that to then taking the breathing tube out. And today he FaceTimed the Buffalo Bills in what was probably a crazy scene. I could only imagine how excited those players were to see their guy speaking to them. And McDermott said, I just needed to be able to lay eyes on him and like see him, because when you see that scene, okay, when you see a guy down like that and you don't know what's going to occur, visually, I need to see that you're okay. And this is what I was referring to when I said there isn't going to be a game played if he's not okay. Which is why I was so frustrated on Monday when we heard that the NFL had told both sidelines that you got 5 minutes after the ambulance drove off to get ready. We're about to play football. And the coaches were like, what? No, we're not playing football. Because once you see that, once you know that your teammate isn't right, there's no playing football. There's no playing after that. And I would even go on to say that if DeMar Hamlin was still, breathing tube, in throat, unresponsive, if that was still the case, I don't know if the Bills are playing this weekend. But thank God, all praise and glory go to JC for the assist once again. Won't he do it? Ain't he an awesome God? We don't even have to have that discussion anymore. Hamlin is trending in the direction of a guy that will get back to some type of normalcy. I don't know if he'll ever play football again. I don't think anybody's really thinking about that at this time. I'm pretty sure at some point DeMar Hamlin will be thinking about that because he loves the game of football. But anytime something like this happens, I'm like, bro, like I wish somebody would have got to Hank Gathers years ago and said, hey, Hank, bro, I know you love it and you'd love to provide for your family, and this is going to give you an opportunity to take your family out of the hood. But, bro, is it worth you losing your life? I wish somebody would have gotten to him because he had a scare. There were warning shots for Hank Gathers, and then he went back for seconds, and the second time, the Lord was like, bro, I gave you a shot. The warning signs were there. You ran through a couple stop signs and a red light. Now I got to reach out and touch you. It's a wrap. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm just so elated that this man is alive and trending towards being well. Oh my God. Wow. Wow, 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 and wow. So, best news of 2023 by far and away. And the NFL had to make a decision. And I said this in the moment. Don't play this game. Because again, I told you, I always come at these situations from a psychological standpoint. With my background, I'm always thinking about all parties involved and what psychologically can happen, the damage that can be done. Cincinnati and Buffalo playing in that particular game. If I'm a player, the first thing I'm thinking about, and it still may occur with Buffalo Bills players going into this game against New England. It's not far-fetched to think that they may be thinking about, some of the events that occurred the last time they stepped on the football field, but trust and believe if they were playing Cincinnati in a 7-3 ball game and resuming from the 5:58 mark of the first quarter, the only thing you're thinking about is that Damar Hamlin situation. It's hard to move past it and just play ball in a game that was stopped due to your teammate almost dying on the field. To me, there was no way that you could resume that game. The minute he collapsed and his heart stopped beating was the minute that game was done, never to be played again. And they made the absolute right decision. I don't think anybody, and I told you, it doesn't matter what they do, they can't be right here. There was no way that they were going to be right with the decision because someone was going to have a gripe. Someone was going to feel like they were getting the short end of the stick, no matter what the NFL decided. But I said they shouldn't play this game. The Bills and the Bengals should only play 16 games this season. And that's what they decided to do. I think it's the right thing. There was no way, because I've already laid out the mental, ramifications of playing this game. It was going to be some emotional damage done if you went back and tried to play that game. In particular, that particular game. Because they are doing this, because that game essentially doesn't exist, and both Buffalo and Cincinnati will play 16 games, the Bengals have essentially clinched the division already. The Ravens can't catch them because what the Ravens needed was a loss, and then they would have needed to beat them to then win the division because they would own the season series. With that game not being played and the Ravens already having 6 losses and Cincinnati only having 4, and the most they could have on the season is 5, they've clinched the AFC North. So they're your 3 seed, essentially. But what that also does is it eliminates Cincinnati from any possibility of being the 1 seed. Now, they could still get the 2 seed because, you know what? I don't even think that's possible because the Chiefs are already 13-3. And even a loss would put them at 13-4, and the Bengals would only be 12-4. So I don't even think they can get to the 2 seed because they own the tiebreaker over Kansas City. So if anybody got the short end of the stick, it'd be Cincinnati. But again, this is a unique set of circumstances. I don't think anybody really should be complaining at this point. It is what it is. You weren't guaranteed to get anything. Okay. If Kansas City wins, which they're going to beat the Raiders. Okay. If Kansas City wins on Saturday, you're still at best the 2 seed if you're Cincinnati. I don't think you were getting the 1 seed anyway. But what the NFL effectively has done now is they've come up with and there was a whole bunch of different things thrown out there that I don't think really ever had any legs. One of those things was a 8-game playoff or 8-team playoff in each conference, which would essentially meant that they added an extra team. Each conference gets 7 teams as is. And then there was this conversation that came about that the NFL was thinking about adding an 8th team to both conferences. That's not the NFL style. That's not their way of doing business this late in the season to just come up with something on the fly. I get it. This is a unique set of circumstances, as I mentioned earlier. And, desperate times call for desperate measures, but that's not the way they conduct business. If they were going to do something like that, a plan like that would have been in place long ago. And this is something that may come up, in the next league meetings, and they may have a better plan in place for this happening, where, the possibility of adding an 8th team may be something that they want to do in the future, but they wouldn't do that in a season where it's already been determined that it's going to be 7-7 like it always is. Because you got teams shutting down players and already thinking that they're mathematically eliminated. You can't just bring them back from the dead, right? Like, that's why this was never a thing. And I never thought they were really entertaining that. But I think they did have a conversation. I think it was fleeting, but I do think a conversation was had. But at the end of the day, I was adamant that they would not add an extra team in each conference and take away the bye week, because that would be their way of trying to make it fair. No bye, because we didn't really play to the finish of the season to see who earned the right to have a first round bye. But what about the Eagles? They played to the finish, and if they beat the Giants on Sunday, they earned a wire-to-wire number 1 seed in the NFC. You're going to take their bye away? I mean, it's not fair to them. So instead of involving a bunch of different teams that have nothing to do with that situation and aren't impacted by what happened on Monday night, you just isolate the teams that have been impacted. And I think that's the best way to go about this, which is what they ultimately decided to do, I had advocated for this. Just play a neutral site in an AFC championship game if it comes to that. If it's Kansas City and Buffalo, it has to be at a neutral site, no matter what happens, right? But if it's Cincinnati and Buffalo, or if it's Cincinnati and Kansas City, then I think you could start getting into home field advantage, because they're the 3 seed. Now, they're going to feel some type of way about that. But to me, if it's Cincinnati and Kansas City, okay, maybe, right? But for me, I think anything Cincinnati and Kansas City should be Kansas City, because they weren't going to catch Kansas City. They needed help, and Kansas City could dead that conversation by beating the Raiders. And no matter what Cincinnati did, they weren't going to catch Kansas City. Okay. But if it's Buffalo and Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game, I think you could make a case for a neutral site game there, because had Cincinnati beaten Buffalo, they could have theoretically leapfrogged them in the standings and been the 2 seed. And thus, there could be a disadvantage for Cincinnati there. But Cincinnati, if Kansas City just continued to take care of business, Cincinnati was never going to catch them. So for me, anything Kansas City, Buffalo, neutral site, anything Buffalo, Cincinnati, AFC Championship, neutral site, anything Kansas City, Cincinnati, you play that game in Kansas City. That's how I would do this. Now, I think there's a chart out there, that but I didn't look at the chart because it was too confusing. I just know what I would do. That's how I would do it. But to me, this is the best outcome for the NFL. I think they did the right thing here. So going into Sunday's slate of games, there's not as many in the AFC now that means as much, because Cincinnati, Baltimore had a chance to mean division, right? There was still seeding to be determined. I think all the seeding, if Kansas City does what they need to do and the Bills do what they need to do, the seeding is what it is. Bills will be 1, Chiefs will be 2, Bengals will be 3. The winner of Jacksonville, Tennessee will be the 4 seed. We all think that's going to be Jacksonville at this point, but we'll see what happens. The 5 seed is already spoken for. That's going to be the I can't say that, because the Ravens are now at 10-6, and I think the Chargers are at 10-6 as well. So I guess there could be some jockeying there for, and that's important, because a first round game at Jacksonville is very winnable. And the difference between going to Jacksonville and going to Cincinnati, the two are not the same. So that's an important that dynamic there between 5 and 6 is important. The Chargers are playing the Broncos, so you'd like to think that they're going to win that game. Meanwhile, the Ravens are playing Cincinnati, and now that the Bengals, they'll know by Sunday. If Kansas City wins, there really isn't anything Cincinnati can do. So they'll know by Sunday if they have something to play for. I guess Buffalo being at this point 12-3 still means something, because if they lose and drop to 12-4 and Cincinnati wins and goes to 11 or 12-4, I don't know what the tiebreakers are there necessarily. but maybe Cincinnati can leapfrog them. I'm not sure about that, but whatever the case may be, that's going to matter who the 5 seed and 6 seed are. Right now, I think Baltimore is your 5 seed and the Chargers are your 6 seed, but that could change with the outcome of Sunday's contest. And then, the 7 seed is still up for grabs. New England, Miami, and I think there's one more team in that mix that can get it, and the Steelers have a long shot. So still interesting times in the AFC. On the NFC side of the bracket, let's go ahead and transition to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. On the NFC side of the bracket, obviously there's a lot of scuttlebutt at the top of the conference because this went from Philadelphia cruising to the number 1 seed, potentially having 2 weeks of, unimportant, unnecessary ball because they've already locked up the conference, not only the division, but the conference too. Jalen Hurts gets injured against Chicago and they lose 2 straight. And now all of a sudden they have to win in week 18 to solidify the NFC East crown and the number 1 overall seed. All hell will break loose if they don't win because that will open the door for Dallas to then win the division. I think if San Francisco wins, they would go to the number 1 seed, however. But I'm not sure what the tiebreakers are in the conference and how that would work. And, I'm trying to think of Dallas because San Francisco and Dallas did not play each other this year. So you would go immediately, I think, to conference record. They may go to common opponents, played against. I don't think there are many between them. I think you go to then conference record. And just thinking about Dallas's losses, lost to Tampa Bay, lost to Jacksonville, lost to the Eagles, and their 4th loss was to Green Bay. So 3 of their 4 losses is in the conference. So that's not good for Dallas. Meanwhile, San Francisco's 4 losses, and they haven't lost in 10 games. So a lot of their losses came early, but they lost to Chicago, which they share a common opponent there with Dallas. Dallas beat Chicago. The 49ers did not. They lost to boy, you asking me to go all the way back to the early portion of the season. They had to have lost to somebody in the division. I would assume they're not perfect in the NFC West, are they? I would guess that. How about I just look it up? Because I don't even know. They lost to the Chiefs. Thank you, Personality Jones. I remember that's the first game they got Christian McCaffrey and they got waxed. So that's 2. Let's just go to the 49ers and
to see DeMar number 1 through my own eyes. I know that's something.
Let's see what they did in the season real quick, because I think they might have lost 2 games. All right. So they lost to, I know they lost to Atlanta. I do remember that. That was early in the season. So they lost to Chicago. They lost to Denver. That's the one I couldn't think of. They lost to Denver. They lost to the Falcons. And they lost to the Chiefs. So they have a better conference record than Dallas. They have 2 losses in the conference. Now, theoretically, both teams play another conference game by playing teams in their division. That could change things. But if both teams win, San Francisco would have the edge with the tiebreaker there, having lost to only Atlanta and Chicago in the conference, losing to Denver and Kansas City outside of it for their 4 losses. So they would go to number 1 if they were to win and the Eagles were to lose. Dallas would then be your 2 seed in the conference because they destroyed Minnesota. So they would leapfrog the Vikings in the standings as well. And the Eagles, it's crazy. They've been the best team in the NFC all season long. They go from the number 1 seed and then number 1 overall seed, a first round bye, to the 5th seed in the conference. Just like that. Unbelievable. That would be an epic collapse for the Philadelphia Eagles if they aren't to get it done. They're going to beat the Giants at home. Jalen Hurts is going to play. It's too big of a game for him not to play. He can rest next week if you get the first round bye, but he's going to play, if you ask me. But a lot of shuffling could be going on if the Eagles don't get it done. But assuming that they do, because that's what I'm going to do, assume that they beat the Giants, because the Giants really don't have anything to play for. But their head coach, Brian Daboll, has already said, we're playing our guys. Like, there are no days off. They got 6 months in the off season to rest. Like, we're out here to play ball. And that's the right attitude to have, because you start resting guys. Look, if you've got guys that, they're a true game time decision, just rest them. But if you don't have a serious injury, you got a nick or a bruise, get out there. If you're Daniel Jones, if you're Saquon Barkley, if you're all of those guys and you're not banged up, truly banged up, get out there. And they're going to play to win. They're going to play to win because they need to keep that momentum going into the playoffs. So that'll be an interesting game, but I expect the Eagles to take care of business there. And everything to pretty much stay status quo, where the Eagles will be your 1 seed, first round bye, 49ers to remain your 2 seed, Vikings to be your 3 seed, Bucks have already clinched the 4 seed, Dallas to stay at the 5 seed, the 6 seed will belong to the Giants, and the 7th seed will be determined through the contest in week number 18. I think it's ultimately going to be Green Bay, because I think Seattle will win, which will eliminate Detroit before the Sunday night game even gets underway. So with that in mind, the Lions that's deflating. Even though you'll still go out there, they'll know before kickoff on Sunday night, which is why I really don't love them being flexed to Sunday night, because they'll know. And even though, and this is why they flex them anyway, because the Lions will still want to play spoiler. They would love nothing more than to sweep Green Bay, send them home knowing that they can't go. Well, you can't go either. So they're going to go out there and they're going to try to kick Green Bay's ass and make sure that neither one of them is participating in the playoffs. However, that's deflating, knowing that you don't have a chance. That mentally, that's still deflating. So I assume that the Seahawks will take care of business, thus rendering that game irrelevant for the Lions, and it'll put Green Bay in the driver's seat where they are essentially in a win and you're in, and they're going to win. So Aaron Rodgers is going to get into the playoffs, which kind of sickens me because they were dead. I left them for dead, and he said he was going to make the playoffs, and he was so arrogant and cocky with it, like nonchalant, like, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. And I was like, man, shut up. You ain't going nowhere but home. And here they are with a chance to get in. And it's because, and they needed a ton of help. It was nothing that they could do. All they could do was win. And they did that. They handled their end of the bargain and took care of business where they needed to take care of it. But other teams allowed them this opportunity, and that sucks. But such is life. So I think the Packers are going to round out the NFC side of the playoffs. And if I had to predict, here are my 7 teams in each conference, and here are the seedings. So we're going to do this. I haven't done this. I'm going to be doing this live with you guys. I should have did this beforehand, but let's go ahead and do this right now. So in the AFC, I think the Bills are going to remain. They're going to beat the Patriots, and it's going to be an emotional. I don't even know what that stadium is called. I'm just going to call it the Ralph. That's what JL Smooth told me he's going to still call it. So I'm just going to call it the Ralph because I don't know what it's called now. but the Bills are going to destroy the Patriots. I told you, I don't want the Patriots anywhere near my playoffs. The Bills are going to ensure that they do their part to keep the Patriots out. But if the Dolphins lose too, or the Steelers don't win, the Patriots still get in. But Bills will be your number 1 seed in the AFC. Number 2 seed will remain the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll beat the Raiders in the first game on Saturday afternoon to ensure that no worse than the 2 seed. The 3 seed will be the Cincinnati Bengals. The number 4 seed will be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they'll take care of the Titans in the nightcap on Saturday evening. The 5 seed will be the Baltimore Ravens. Cincinnati won't have anything really to play for. Once they already know that Kansas City took care of business. Now, again, you know what? I'm going to scratch that. I don't like the way Baltimore is playing right now. I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to play in this season finale. I'm going to put the Chargers here at the 5 seed. And I'm going to put the Ravens at the 6 because I think Lamar will come back for the playoffs, but I don't think he's going to play in this season finale. I think John Harbaugh is starting to get upset too. I'm starting to get a feeling like they feel like Lamar's jerking them because he hasn't gotten his bread. Like he could have been, this process could have been a bit expedited had he been paid already, but Lamar's kind of slow playing it because he hasn't been paid yet. And so I do think there is a bit of that kind of posturing going on right now. And so I think that situation, I told you that situation is going to get ugly. I told you that already. And I think it's heading in that direction. But Baltimore is your 6th seed. And I am going to say that, boy, could we see the Steelers sneak in as a 7 seed? Wow. The Bills are going to beat the Patriots. And I think the Jets can beat the Dolphins, man. They're going to start Joe Flacco this week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to go with the Steelers, man. I'm going to put the Steelers in as the 7 seed because they're going to beat the Browns. Unbelievable if that happens. That damn Mike Tomlin, man. Never count him out. Meanwhile, in the NFC, Eagles are going to... So somebody just said that Hurts is out. I don't believe them. So I'm going to look it up myself and see if he's playing this week or not. Yeah, 6 hours ago, he's listed as questionable and he's trending towards playing on Sunday. That's the last report. And I figure that's going to be the case. Eagles are going to be your number 1 seed. I just don't see how Jalen Hurts doesn't play in this game. 2 seed is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. 3 seed is going to remain the Minnesota Vikings. 4 seed is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've already locked that up. 5 seed is going to remain the Dallas Cowboys. 6 seed is going to remain the New York Giants. They've already locked that up. And your 7 seed in the NFC is going to be the Green Bay Packers. So I feel more confident about the NFC side of things, how to go 1 through 7. And all Philadelphia has to do is win, and I think everything else kind of locks itself in. If they lose, all hell breaks loose, and we're going to have all kinds of shakeups in the conference. Minnesota is pretty much locked into 3. Tampa Bay is locked into 4, but we could have a different 1, 2, and 5 if Philadelphia doesn't win. So that's crazy. As far as the AFC is concerned, I pretty much feel like the top 3 seeds are going to be locked up. Buffalo's going to take care of business. Kansas City's going to take care of business. Cincinnati's pretty much locked into 3 if the first 2 teams in the conference take care of business. Jacksonville still could lose to Tennessee, right? I don't see how they lose, but Derrick Henry's going to be back. And all they need is one of those classic 227-yard, 3-touchdown Derrick Henry performances against Jacksonville, and they could steal this game with Joshua Dobbs at quarterback. So I assume Jacksonville, who's playing with abundance of confidence right now, is going to take care of business. Chargers are going to win against Denver. And I think simultaneously the Baltimore Ravens will lose against Cincinnati, which will net the Chargers the 5th seed, which if you're a Chargers fan, that's the best outcome for you. If you're a Ravens or Chargers fan, you should be fighting like hell to get the 5 seed. That is your best chance at getting to the AFC Championship game. Same thing in the NFC. If you are a team, like if I'm the Eagles, yep, the first round bye is awesome, but playing against and with Jalen Hurts having an injury, you need that week off, honestly. But it's not the worst thing in the world to go to Tampa Bay for your first playoff game. I get it. It's Tom Brady, yada, yada, yada. Still, it's not the worst thing in the world to have to go to Tampa Bay. Like Dallas, if you're Dallas and you don't win the division, you're going to get a hell of a consolation prize going to Tampa Bay against a struggling Buccaneers football team. So, both conferences, like the 4 seed isn't great. Jacksonville's a little bit more dangerous, if you ask me, just because they're playing with more confidence and they don't know any better. Like the Bucs know that they're underachieving. They know that they should be playing better and they're not. I think both 4 seeds could get eliminated in wild card weekend. And so if I'm the Chargers or the Ravens, I'm doing everything in my body, anything within my reach to get to the 5th seed. You got to win on Sunday so that you can avoid, falling to 6 and having to go to Cincinnati. I mean, both conferences. Look, I think the 3 and 4 seeds in the NFC are both compromised and weak, and you can go there and win. So the difference between a 5 and a 6 in the NFC, even though both of those are pretty much locked in, like Giants they can't elevate to 5. They can only be the 6. They're locked into the 6 seed. They can't fall to 7, but they can't elevate to 5. So they're locked into 6. They've already played Minnesota and scared the bejesus out of them. They know they can go to Minnesota and win. So that'll be, interesting stuff. But nonetheless, I should have done this at the start because it's social media maneuvers. I want you guys to go ahead and start lining up comments. You should have been doing that while I was talking, but I'm a little late and tardy. So be it. But now if you're out there, you want a comment to be read, use the hashtag LouieTLive, and we'll jump into that if we have time. For those of you who want to skip straight to the front of the line, super chats are the way to do that. And so let's get to the comment section now, and we start with a super chat from Kyle. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Kyle writes, "Happy Friday, Lou." Likewise, Kyle. "It's payday and great news about Hamlin. Just got paid Friday night." Are you about to get in on me? Are you about to go in on me or something? You say it's payday. It's Friday. Okay, I hear you. "Goes to show the power of prayer. The advancement in medical tech and practice saved this man." Absolutely. If this were 1986, he would have died. If this were 1993, he would have died. If this was 2004, he would have died. If this was 2015, I'd go out on a limb and say he would have died. As you mentioned, the advancements in modern science and technology and just the preparation that these teams go through, having the staff prepared for the most dire of situations saved this man's life. Literally, them being ready, having that AED machine ready, all of those things really gave him a fighting chance to survive. And so, I mean, it's light years different. People keep bringing up 1971. I can only imagine how they botched that 6 ways to Sunday. Okay. I mean, that was back in the days where if you tore your ACL, your career was over. It's a totally different time back in the 70s. So I could only imagine that the upgrades in technology, science, and just the thought process of how to handle this saved his life without a doubt. Go enjoy the weekend, Kyle. Shit, you got me wanting to turn up. It's payday. It's Friday. Go get it in, man. Anyway. All right. So there are no more comments, and that's my fault. I should have put that out there. Rich says, honest prediction. What do you think Sam Howell will do Sunday? And if Ron's job is in question, how much will Howell's performance potentially save Ron's job? Ron's job isn't in question. It's not in the balance. This game isn't going to make or break Ron's tenure in Washington. More damage was done to Ron's ability to remain coach last Sunday than anything that'll happen on Sunday against Dallas in Week 18. That said, Ron's not going anywhere. We've already laid out all the reasons as to why Ron will be here again next year. As far as Sam Howell's performance, what am I expecting? I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think he's going to have flashes that he shows in the game that makes you say, hey, he can do this. He can play in this league. And then he's going to have the rookie mistakes. I expect him to turn the ball over twice in this game, 1 interception, 1 fumble. I expect him to throw a touchdown pass. Maybe, you know what? I take it back. I expect him to run for a touchdown. We're only going to score 1 touchdown in this game. And it'll be a Sam Howell touchdown run because they'll utilize his legs in the red zone like they did in the preseason where they had him running all over the place. A lot of read options and a lot of quarterback keeps and things of that nature. That's something the Cowboys will have to account for that they wouldn't have had to account for had it been Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke. But he'll account for 1 touchdown. He'll turn it over twice. He'll make some throws that wow you. He'll look like a rookie at times. He'll take some sacks. He'll run around a little bit. He'll probably have about 42 yards, rushing in this game. But when it's all said and done, he'll look like a rookie. He'll look like a rookie. So, Stathan Murthy writes, what cornerbacks do you like for Washington in the draft, and what do you think we should do with our first round pick? Again, I don't like having the what we should do with our first round pick conversation this early in the process because, again, understand that free agency comes before the draft. And so something that we see as a glaring need right now could be cleaned up in free agency, and there is no need to do this in the draft. I don't see a way that cornerback is addressed because corners cost a lot of money. And if you can avoid paying that position top premium dollar by drafting a youngin, that's what you do. So I assume that they're going to go into the draft and try to find a young stud, and that'll be the first pick. Again, barring anything at the quarterback position. They could go and get a quarterback. I mean, if I'm Ron Rivera and I have autonomy, I'm going to try to trade up and get one of these young stallions. That's what's going to ultimately save my job. If you just stand pat or you go after Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo, you're getting fired next year. So I really don't know what is going to become of Washington's first pick in the draft next, or this upcoming draft. But the assumption is that it'll be a defensive player, probably a cornerback, if I had to guess. What corners do I like? I think there are 3 or 4 that will be in play where we'll be selecting, because I think we'll end up being 10 or 11 if we lose to Dallas, somewhere in there. And so obviously Joey Porter Jr., I think he'll be gone in the top 10. Don't think he'll be around for us to select, but he's in the mix. Gonzalez, the corner from Oregon, is intriguing. He's big. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. That's what you're looking for in today's NFL. Big, long, rangy corner that can run. He checks off all of those boxes. a little bit more raw than some of the other guys. But if you can coach it up, he's what you're looking for. The Alabama Crimson Tide have a corner that will be in that same neighborhood. And then there's Kaylee Ringo from Georgia, another big, long, rangy corner. I want to see how fast he runs. I'm still not, and I know he's got to be fast, but I need to see it. I look at him and I'm like, you look a little slow to me. He's gonna run for 3.7 or something crazy like that, and I'm gonna go, okay, good enough for me. Okay, but right now I just question his long speed, so I just need to see it. But anyway, let's see. Red Wings 01 writes, another QB prospect getting talked about as a potential first rounder is Stanford quarterback Tanner McKee. Do you have any opinions on him at the moment? I watched a little bit of him. First of all, I try to stay away from Stanford quarterbacks. They play in such a limited offense, but I don't know if you watched Stanford this year. They were running that same delayed mesh read option that the Wake Forest Demon Deacons were running with the guy that didn't get drafted that everybody was talking about last year, that I said, hey, you need to take your ass back to school. He came out and didn't get drafted. The Eagles picked him up and then cut him, and he's probably playing football in Canada now or something like that. I forgot his name, but it's one of the worst offenses to watch. It's terrible. They hold that thing at the mesh point for every bit of 3 or 4 seconds, however long the defense allows them to hold it for. So if that's what you're running, I don't love it, And I watched him, big kid, live arm, not a great athlete, prototypical pocket passer, but I don't know, man. We'll see about this. We'll see about that guy. I think he's a little bit more athletic than I'm giving him credit for, but I don't see it. He's not better than Davis Mills. I'll just say that. I don't think he's better than Davis Mills, and we see what Davis Mills is. So, I don't think that's going to be a guy that gets selected in the first round. But Rich says, honestly, I'm not mad at Ron keeping his job. I would just not want him to cut mid. I just not want to cut him mid next year, which is the worst thing, but definitely not the best. So essentially, he said he's not mad at Ron being back, which I don't think most people want him gone. But if he's back, you're not, you don't have pitchfork and torch in hand. If Scott Turner isn't back, if Scott Turner's back, I think that's when the real problem persists. If he comes back next year, there is a realistic possibility that he could be fired during the season next year. Like when the odds come out of first coach to be fired, if there's new ownership, I think Ron Rivera is going to be the coach with the greatest odds to be fired first next season. So yeah, that does exist for sure. But you'll see what happens. Kevin the PRF writes, Dan Snyder's opening day loss in 1999 came to Dallas. That was the game Washington was up 35-14. That was the last time I cried over a football game. I was talking so much shit to my dad that day. And I'm a little kid at that point. I'm 12, 13 years old or whatever. And we are just giving it to these boys. If you remember, that was the year that Stephen Davis had over 1,400 yards rushing, 1,405 to be exact. You had 2,000-yard receivers in Michael Westbrook and Albert Connell. The tight ends were really good on that team. Steven Alexander, Jamie Asher. That was a good football team, man. Like, that was the last time I thought we had a chance to win a Super Bowl, was 99. And we were killing them. Brad Johnson was in fuego. We were up 35-14, and we let the Cowboys tie that bitch up, and they won the toss in overtime. And the very first play of overtime is a Rocket Ishmael 80-yard touchdown from Troy Aikman, and I lost it. I absolutely lost it. Oh my God. He says, Only fitting Dallas bookends his 23-year failure. I couldn't agree more. They're going to kick our ass too. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah, it's Newman. His name isn't Jordan though, Rich. It's Newman. Jamie. That's his name. Jamie Newman. That's his name. Good pull. Even though you didn't get his first name right, you jogged my memory. Good pull, Rich. Joe Rockhead J. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, rookie or not, I can't see Sam being worse than Wentz was last week. He won't be. I assure you of that. I told you that's one of the worst performances we've seen by a Washington quarterback in quite some time. And we've had some bad ones. We've had some performances. Rex Grossman, I think, had a performance where he threw like 2 or 3 interceptions in the first half against like the Eagles in that year when we started 2-0. I want to say that was Ryan Kerrigan's rookie season, 2011. Start 2-0, and then Rex throws like 3 interceptions in the first half against Philadelphia. We had some bad ones, man. The John Beck 872 check down game where we got shut out by Buffalo. There was another the game where Roy Halou Jr. sets the record for most receptions in a game against San Francisco, I think with 15 catches for like 12 yards. It was a disgrace. We've had some bad ones, man. I mean, the Dirty Chaz first half against the Giants back in 2018. Are you kidding me? We were down 30-0 at halftime, and this bum had already turned it over 2 or 3 times. We had some bad ones. Wentz's performance is up there, man. It was awful. So, no, he's not going to be anywhere near that performance. As long as Scott Turner is OC, Adrian voice, you can't win. We already know that. Anyway, I digress. So that is going to take us to our final segment of the show in garbage time. So what I'm looking for from this weekend, continued progress with DeMar Hamlin. And I like I said, I feel like we've escaped the worst of the situation. Now it's just about him getting back to, where he needs to be a functioning human, and then trying to get back to a level of normalcy. And then we'll have that discussion about, is football ever possible for him again? But you want continued progress in that situation. But what I'm looking for, you got 2 Saturday games. Chiefs will take care of business against the Raiders. I really don't think that's up for debate. But I will say this. Last week, Jarrett Stidham didn't suck. Gave the 49ers all they could ask for and then some. Didn't suck. So keep an eye on that. But the Chiefs, I think, will win that football game. The nightcap is where it's at. That's Jags at Titans. I'm not looking forward to necessarily seeing Joshua Dobbs again, but they will have Derrick Henry, unlike the Thursday night game against Dallas. So Titans, do not count out Mike Vrabel. We've had these discussions before, okay? Don't do it. Just like Mike Tomlin, don't count these guys out. As a matter of fact, I'm making the declaration right now. The Bills will beat the Patriots and the Jets will beat the Dolphins. Thus, the Pittsburgh Steelers will get in, and they will beat the Browns, and thus they will get in to the playoffs. In its first season as a rookie, Kenny Pickett will be playing bonus football. How about that? The one quarterback in that draft class that had a chance is showing you that he's good, and he's going to play bonus football in his first season. And what did I tell you guys last year? You could have replaced Kenny Pickett with Desmond Ridder. I said the Steelers are one of those teams. They're well coached. They play quality defense. They're going to run the football. You stick a quarterback that's ready to go. And I said Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder were the 2 quarterbacks out of that last draft class that were ready to go. Desmond Ridder to a lesser extent, but I bet you if you would have put him in Pittsburgh and just said, hey, manage the game, don't turn over, we'll use your legs, all that good stuff, I bet you Desmond Ridder would have had them in a similar position as they're in right now. But Pickett looks the real deal. He's been taking care of the football. I think that they're going to have a chance. And if they get in as the 7 seed, I could see them pushing Kansas City to the limit. The Chiefs haven't been all that great of late, to be honest with you. Struggled with Denver twice in the last month and a half. Struggled with Seattle, got that win as well. They should have lost to Houston. That game went to overtime and they were able to prevail, but they were losing that game for much of the game and they struggled. They haven't been great. Like, they haven't been destroying teams and putting up 40 or anything of the sort. They've been playing quality defense, kind of ball control a bit. We'll see if they're able to kind of break out of that shell this week and put up some points. I think they're going to have to against the Raiders. I think they're going to have to score some points to win this week. So, but I could see Pittsburgh kind of grinding them down and making it an interesting game. Don't think they'll beat them, but I think Pittsburgh gets in. Jacksonville as well. On the NFC side, I think Seattle wins. So that puts the pressure on Green Bay to have to win. I mean, it doesn't matter. Green Bay has to win regardless. If Seattle loses, then that just means the winner of that Sunday Night Football nightcap is in. It's a win and you're in. But I think Seattle wins against the Rams, which will set the stage for Green Bay to have to win to get in, and the Lions to really be playing for pride at that point. I think the Eagles will start Jalen Hurts. They will beat the Giants, remain the number 1 seed. 49ers will do the same. They will win against they are playing Arizona at home. They'll beat the Cardinals. They'll remain the 2 seed. The Vikings will remain the 3 seed. They're playing Chicago. And the Buccaneers have already locked up the 4 seed. The 5 seed will be the Dallas Cowboys. The 6 seed has already been locked up, and that belongs to the New York Giants. And I believe the 7 seed will be the Green Bay Packers. They will beat the Detroit Lions at Lambeau Field. It will not be easy. That Lions team is game. But the last time these two teams met in Detroit, Green Bay had every opportunity to win that game. Rodgers threw 3 picks. I think 2 of them were in the red zone. I'd never seen him play that poorly in my life. And so they're out for revenge. And revenge is a dish best served ice cold. And the Packers are going to be cold-blooded on a cold Lambeau Field turf in January. So that's what I look forward to seeing have happen. And then we will turn our attention to the postseason and then understand that there's roughly a month of this left. And just one aside, the NFL is going to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, no, I don't think I saw that. I don't think they're doing anything with the playoffs. I think at one point I saw that they were going to push it back a week. Let's see, NFL playoffs pushed back. See if that's a thing. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that everything that has transpired with DeMar Hamlin's health and them going with the week 18, business as usual and not trying to play that game over allows them to keep the schedule as is. So there's that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T. I've given you my 7 teams in each conference. So the big games, the big matchups, now with Cincinnati already clinching the North due to the league doing the right thing. And in my belief is they've done the right thing here by canceling the week 17 game between the Bills and the Bengals. Cincinnati's already locked it up. So that Ravens game now doesn't mean as much. The 2 big games, one in each conference. Well, there are really like 4 big games. Jacksonville and Tennessee in the AFC. Buffalo and New England, New York Jets and Miami Dolphins, and then the Steelers and the Browns all have playoff implications because if New England loses, then, and they're going to lose, Buffalo is going to destroy them, then Miami has a chance. They're the next team up. But with Teddy Bridgewater dealing with an injury, Tua being out, and them just signing Mike Glennon to their practice squad, and he may ultimately have to play in this game, the Jets should beat them with Joe Flacco at quarterback, which gives the Steelers an opportunity to beat the Browns and get in. And I think that's what's going to happen. In the NFC, Eagles and Giants is a massive game because that could shake up the landscape of the NFC playoff picture if the Eagles don't get it done. But I surmise that they will, which will land them at number 1. 49ers will take care of business against Arizona. They'll stay at number 2. Minnesota stays at 3. Tampa Bay is already locked up 4. Dallas stays at 5 because of the Eagles taking care of business. And then the Giants have already locked up 6. And I think Green Bay is going to beat Detroit, giving them the 7th and final spot in the 2023 playoffs. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 308th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. We will be live tomorrow night at the conclusion of Titans Jags. We'll wrap up the entire day, which will include Raiders at Chiefs. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, Sunday, I'll be live after the Washington game, and then we'll be live after the Sunday night game of Packers hosting the Lions. So family business across the board in the National Football League. You know what it is. If those two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, that's good old-fashioned family business. And we'll get it in all 16 games to finish up the 2022 NFL regular season. For me, your man Louie T, that's going to do it. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Until then, enjoy your Friday. I'm going to enjoy my Friday because it's the only day that night rather, this weekend that I'll have to spend with family. So I'm going to enjoy my Friday night. I say you do the same. We'll reconvene tomorrow night, and then we'll do it again one final time on Sunday night to close the regular season and then turn our attention to the postseason. Until then, you guys take care. God bless and good night. Continued prayers for Damar Hamlin. God, to glory be to God. Or to God be the glory. I sound like I already had a drink with me already. Y'all have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.